On today's episode of PhotoKitchen, I merge into traffic, drive by a mountain lake, and purchase some coffee. Well, hello and welcome to episode 341 of PhotoKitchen. I'm your humble host, MD Welch, and today we're out of the kitchen. We're on the road. We're going outside. That's the good news. Because the bad news is today's menu item is not delicious. It is a whole helping of broccoli because it's time to eat our vegetables, kids. This is not one of those fun, sexy gear review, teaching you how to be efficient in Lightroom. And by the way, check out the channel because I got a lot of that. But today we're actually talking about something that, while not being very exciting, is very important, and that is photo permitting. And I know that's going to bring up a lot of questions, a lot of problems, a lot of headaches, maybe even a little bit of nightmares for you. Now, one thing I want to say, actually there's a few things I want to say before we dive into the commercial photo permitting, is that a big argument against commercial permitting for photography on public lands, because that's what we're really talking about, a big argument that is made against this is that they're public lands. So we shouldn't have to pay for access, we shouldn't have to pay for any sort of fees or anything like that. The First Amendment, public lands, taxpayer money, all of that should just get us on the land. And listen, I understand that argument. I don't agree with it, but I totally understand it. However, the only thing I will say to those people who do believe in that argument is that we are talking about doing a commercial process. We're talking about making money off of these public lands, which makes it a little bit more of an access issue and all about a commercial issue. So if you do have a strong opinion about that and you believe that you should just have the right to go on public lands and shoot, this is probably not the video for you. But I'm sure there's a camera review, Lightroom review, or a lighting tutorial that's right up your alley on my channel, and I hope you check that out. Now, the other thing that I want to say is I've been sitting on this topic for about 8 months. I had a real bad interaction with an agency I'm going to walk through, or at least walk through the process of getting a permit from. So it was complicated, it was frustrating. In fact, it's probably one of the more frustrating things I've ever done as a photographer. And it doesn't need to be that frustrating, by the way, but it was. Now, the reason why I've sat on this is because I felt like it was a fresh wound, right? And I was going to be more emotional about my narrative than really giving you any good information. Also, fortunately, a few weeks ago, I had an interaction at a photo conference with members of this particular agency that came in to answer questions. That was fantastic. Now, I'm not going to name the agency nor the conference because it's really unimportant. It's more important that we're talking about the process as a whole and the problems with it and how to solve it. So to those individuals who put on the conference, to those individuals that came in to answer the questions, you probably know who you are. Thank you very much for your time. But again, I'm not going to name names to protect the innocent, if nothing more. How's it going? I purchased an annual pass over the weekend, and of course it hasn't come yet.
You're all good. You showed me it, so you're all good.
Okay, thanks so much.
No problem.
So with all of that out of the way, we have to ask a few questions. First of all, are you a commercial shooter, at least in the eyes of the public land that you're working on? And the short answer is yes. There's very few instances where you're not actually doing commercial work, at least in the eyes of most of these agencies. Gone are the days of going out, getting paid for a job, shooting on a location, applying for a permit beforehand, of course, and then coming back and delivering the job. Digital cameras gave people more access. Smartphones and social media influencers have revolutionized the working on travel photography or influencing on the actual lifestyle stuff. So that has all kind of changed the way that we work. Really, the only people who are not doing commercial photography anymore are those individuals who are just going out in beautiful places like this and taking pictures of their family and not posting them on social media. Social media is going to be the big thing, and we'll talk about that towards the end as far as like loopholes go. But for all essential purposes, if you're shooting for a job, for promotion, for your own promotion, even if you're putting it on social media and you don't have that many followers, it is still a commercial shoot in the eyes of these agencies. So be prepared for that. And also using some excuse like, oh, these are just my friends, no big deal, is not going to fly really well. Keep in mind, the reason why this process has become so complicated and so frustrating is because there's so many people taking advantage of the system and trying to get out of actually getting a permit and paying for it. With that being said, how do you actually get a permit? Well, every agency is going to be different, and you have to keep that in mind. But for the most part, you're going to have the 3 Ps when it comes to permitting. You're going to have paperwork, you're going to have proof of insurance, and then you're going to have payment. Paperwork's relatively straightforward. It's not very complicated in most instances. But what is complicated is the type of a permit that you might want to apply for. Now, you have simple day use, which is straightforward. You're just applying for a day or maybe a series of days. Then you have an annual permit. Most agencies don't give you monthly. It's usually annual or day. And then you have commercial rights permits, which not only give you the ability to shoot on the public land, but also control the public land, meaning you could clear out a beach, you could clear out a trail or a road, and you own that space. This is reserved usually for higher end shoots, big commercials, films, TV shows, and the like. So for most photographers, it's all about whether you're going to shoot for a couple of days or you could shoot long enough or often enough to justify an annual pass. And that you have to break down in price. Some agencies, it's $50 a day and a $500 annual pass. So if you're going to photograph at an area or areas controlled by that agency, and more than 10 times, you've paid for the annual pass. But just make sure that you're getting the right permit. So the next part of the process is the one that irritates photographers the most, and that is proof of insurance, because that's where things can get a little costly. They can also get a little complicated. Now, if you don't have liability insurance, I don't know what to say to you as a professional photographer. You need to have coverage. You need to be protected in case something goes wrong on a shoot. And most agencies are going to require some level of liability in the form of a certificate of insurance, by the way. That's what you're going to provide as proof. And as far as coverage goes, it's going to be somewhere between $1 million to $2 million of coverage. Now, outside of that, some agencies might expand on that. They might require additional insurance. For example, a particular agency that I work with all the time, they want to see additional paperwork that names them as an insuree, if I get that terminology correct. And this is my big tip on insurance. The minute somebody starts to ask for additional information or additional language on the documentation, don't use the little portal that conveniently comes with your subscription or your insurance fees. Use some sort of interaction between the agency or an underwriter and get them directly involved. They will be able to help you out with any sort of additional documentation. My process took close to a month simply because paperwork on the insurance side kept getting refused and kicked back. Because of that, I almost missed a couple of different shoots. The minute I involved somebody from the actual agency and bypassed that actual underwriting automation thing, it became a process that was about 2 days. Now, another thing to point out about insurance is some agencies will require additional coverage for automobile insurance. So simple liability, simple collision will not cover it. You'll need full liability, full collision, and this can be expensive. And this is one of those policies that I do think photographers are right to question. It's a lot of money, to be sure. All in all, to shoot on one of these areas, is probably going to set you back anywhere between $2,000 to $4,000 a year, depending on what your automotive insurance costs and also what your liability insurance costs. But that's usually what most agencies or most groups want for your proof of insurance: liability, auto, and maybe some additional documentation to demonstrate that they're named on the coverage as well. So the last P is payment, and that's relatively straightforward. How much do you need to pay for the permit that you've applied for? Relatively straightforward, but make sure that you're getting the most amount of value. In my particular case, the largest permit that I apply for is managed by an agency that oversees multiple areas in the state. So I'm going to go there more than 10 times. An annual permit's $500 a year, $50 for a day fee. So if I go more than 11 times, it's paid for itself. So just make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck. You're getting the right value for what you need to do. Don't apply for an annual permit if you're only going to go there a couple of times. The only thing I will say, though, to be aware of is that many agencies have a 2 to 3 week turnaround time for the processing of these permits. Having an annual permit means that if all of a sudden something comes up, you could usually go and shoot at that location on a moment's notice. However, some agencies, like this one, do require you to give them some level of notice. And again, peak time, very busy times, you're going to have to give them a couple of weeks. But if you give them a couple of days notice on low times, they should be okay with it. Not that big of a deal. Make sure that you communicate with these agencies. Good communication is going to make the whole process a lot easier, from application to also requesting dates if you need to do that based upon your permit. And make sure you understand what the permit is giving you permission to do. Some permits will give you permission to shoot, but will not give you permission to actually go to a place without reserving a date. Make sure you check all of those things before applying for any permit. So now that we've talked about the who needs a permit and how to get the permit, let's talk about loopholes. And before I talk about these loopholes and these problems with enforcement, let me say this. This is not a mandate for you to go out and break the law. In fact, I believe in the permitting process, and the reason why this has become so complicated and so tough to deal with is because so many people are breaking the law. So keep that in mind. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that it's almost impossible for many of these agencies to enforce these particular laws, mostly because they have created a huge barrier for themselves in enforcement. They've defined almost everybody as a commercial photographer. So as I'm walking around this area today, I see people taking photos of each other and selfies. Are they posting them on social media? Are they engaging other people on social media? That's commercial photography by these own agencies' definitions, which means that there's probably 80% photos or commercial photography happening in these areas that will never get enforced or never get stopped. It also means if you have a big camera and you stand out, you're probably going to get stopped before somebody with a small camera or an action camera. And that does feel a little bit like persecution. Other things are general loopholes. If you are a landscape photographer, even if you're doing commercial work, if certain agencies will look past that and not enforce a permit on you. Now, the logic is pretty sound. And when I asked this question, it was pointed out to me that when I have people in my frame, I'm legally responsible for their well-being. And if something happens, I'm held liable for that. However, at the end of the day, if somebody trips over a commercial landscape photographer's tripod or they hit them with a tripod or something like that, who's liable then? I don't think that it's fair that people in the frame mean that I have to pay a significant amount of money to shoot at a location where another photographer with nobody in the frame doesn't. So this could seem a little bit confusing, a little bit frustrating, and I'm right there with you. I don't like this process in a lot of ways. But a great question was asked at this conference that I mentioned earlier, and that was, who do we talk to about this? And the simple answer is, every 4 years, you have the ability to vote. Photographers have a great way to band together, share messages, craft messages. That's what we do for a living. We are great storytellers. And it's probably time for us to get together and start reaching out to our representatives or those who are running against those representatives and ask them how they feel about the permitting process. There's no reason why some of these restrictions should be so hefty, especially on small business owners. We shouldn't have to carry the weight that major studios do. Also, some of the times or some of the waits seem to be excessive. For me, I also have a big problem with the fact that you have state agencies, county agencies, city agencies, and there doesn't seem to be an easy way to apply for permits in all of them. When I register my car, I don't have to register them in different counties. When I get a driver's license, I don't have to get a new one when I cross over from one state to another state. This process needs to be simplified, and it's up to states maybe like Oregon, Washington, or my home state of Nevada to take the initiative here and make it easier for people to get a photo passport or a photo commercial permit that covers all of the areas. Might be a little bit more money, but you would be able to go where you need to go and you could just simply show this permit. Of course, for higher end shoots, you're going to need to reach out to people, but this is for those photographers, which are going to cover most photographers that are doing small social media campaigns, that are shooting those family portraits. There needs to be some level of change because again, and I can't stress this enough, I'm really concerned with the ability or inability for these agencies to really enforce the rules that they're putting on us, that one of these days they're going to say no more cameras. And then we're going to have an uphill battle just to get access again, more or less getting affordable access. So do yourself a favor, get on those Facebook groups, start reaching out to other photographers, start reaching out to your assembly people, your aldermen, men, women, whoever that is running, city council, all of those different individuals and ask them, how do they feel about their permitting process? What's their stance on this? Tell them your issues with it. You might be spending a ridiculously higher amount of money that I am in my particular state opposed to your state. Some counties and cities might be far cheaper. Why is that, right? Why can't one agency match with another agency? And at the end of the day, if we can start to communicate a little bit and we start to actually band together and more importantly, follow the rules and make sure other people are following the rules, this process might be a lot easier. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And if you have, thank you for your support. And please share this video with other people. Let's get this conversation going. I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments down below. Thanks for spending time with me today. I hope these veggies wash down good. Maybe I put enough cheese on that broccoli to make it enticing. Hopefully this little scenic excursion away from PhotoKitchen kept you engaged. Until next time, I'm MD Welch wishing you all the best from a very beautiful non-photo kitchen. Take care.